And I think we're live. Okay, so let's see. Test, test. That volume looks pretty good. Let me know if you can or can't hear me. Actually, yeah, one way or the other. Either way is fine. Totally fine. I'd prefer if you hear me, though. But give me the honest answer. That'd be jolly good. Okay, so I've got Command Center set up, and it looks like we are actually rolling. Cool. All right. So, hello everyone. Happy New Year. Hope the new year's treating you really well. It's been pretty good here. Aside from eggnog no longer being in season, so I'm pretty much back to water. But other than that, staying healthy, getting back into the routine. But anyway, had a had a lot of stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about. In a nutshell, just what I see going on in 2018 with me and with Patreon. And if you're on social media, I know you've probably seen no shortage of New Year's resolutions. And I know it's really popular right now to kind of bash New Year's resolutions because, well, usually they fall apart. I think I read a statistic like 92% of New Year's resolutions fail. Whether that's true or not, I've got no idea. But anyway, I guess this isn't really a resolution necessarily. This might not be something I stick to, but I've got a bunch of stuff that I want to try on Patreon in the coming year. And so I want to take a moment to bounce some of this off of you all and see what you have to say. I'd love some feedback, and that's why I want to do this for all patrons, not just at the $7 level like our usual one. I'll probably do another one, a Q&A later this month when I get back from Florida. Um, Florida from, hey, John Timlin. I see you're on here. I'm going to see you in Florida very soon. Cool. So, in a nutshell, um, there's this thing that happens to a lot of artists, and if you've taken a workshop from me, you've probably heard me talk about this before. When you get to a point where um, you the ideas that are coming out of your head are a little bit too familiar to you. They seem like they might be just repetition from other things that you've created. And as much as that can be sort of a frustrating place creatively, I think it's also good. Anytime that's happened to me, I feel like coming out the other side of it has always produced some kind of cool creative thing that I end up being really proud of. And I'm sure if you play music, uh, I'm sure you can relate to that one way or another. Um, but for me, that's what I've been kind of going through a little bit. As a lot of you know, I've been doing the Scottish lute music thing lately, and that's been fun to find another source of repertoire. That's kind of fun and exciting, and it's also, I think it's really cool because it's simple enough to teach to a broad number of people, but it just sounds cool and it's new. So that makes me excited. I've dug up some old compositions that I haven't worked on in quite some time that I'd like to finish that are bigger pieces. Um, but sort of my standard thing that I usually do whenever I get stuck in a rut creatively is I go looking at other instruments generally, and seeing what techniques I can find that they're doing and how maybe I can apply them on dulcimer in a way that that maybe I haven't heard, or just my fingers aren't really familiar with them. And that's been a really big source of inspiration for me in the past. It's how sweep picking and those rapid fire slap bass inspired triplets came about. That's how a lot of ideas for improvisation and licks came out of the mountain dulcimer for me. And that's what I'm doing right now. The As far as the instrument is concerned, actually been kind of going back to a little video that I recorded while I was in California this past year. When I was there in August for Redwood Dulcimer Day, uh, I also went to San Francisco for the first time in my life, and that was a lot of fun. And being in San Francisco for the first time, and I had great tour guides. Our friends Neil Hellman and Steve Yulberg were there, and it was great. But while we were in Chinatown, I saw two different street performers playing an instrument called I believe it's pronounced the erhu. It's funny, whenever I say that, it sounds like, I don't know, I think it sounds like an insult or something like that. Like you call someone an erhu, but I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce the instrument, the name of this instrument. And they were, well, the first person who I heard playing erhu while I was in San Francisco, he was playing a lot of like American folk music, like Go Tell Aunt Rhody and Oh Susanna, like another Stephen Foster music. And the second fellow who we saw street performing on this instrument, I don't know if what he was performing was traditional necessarily, because I'm no expert in that music, but to these Western ears, anyway, what he was playing sounded like it was a lot more suited to that instrument. And there were really specific techniques that he was doing that kind of hit me. One of them was this. One, if you're not familiar with this instrument, it's bowed, and imagine, if you can imagine, just this stick vertically. And at the end of the stick, you've got, one end for tuning, and at the other end is sort of this resonant cylindrical body. And there's a bow in between two strings, and it's played. It's not fretted or anything. There's not really a fretboard, but you place your fingers on this string to adjust the distance that the length is of the vibrating string length. I guess that's the best way. I'm doing a terrible job of describing it, but Google search erhu. It's cool. But some of the techniques that this fellow was using, I noticed he would play a note for this one particular piece. He'd play a note, hit a higher note, and then do this really interesting slide, like a really fast slide down to a note significantly lower. And all this music was based on the pentatonic scale, as much as I could tell. And well, actually, I've got my dulcimer right here. I'll try and imitate some of what he was doing. If I can get this situated. And, all right. So you'd start with a note, play a higher note, and then slide down. So and I just think that's a really kind of a cool texture that I haven't really heard explored very much on the mountain dulcimer, in a musical sense. So some idea like that. I also been messing around with trying to put a lot of an extra amount of vibrato on everything to imitate, some of that playing as well. And I just think it's kind of a cool sound. So I wrote this piece, I don't know, I think it was back when I was living in Gainesville, actually. And it sort of imitated some of those ideas a little bit. It was more based on the Another instrument, I believe it's called the pipa. That's sort of fretted. It's four strings, sort of a blend of that and the Japanese shamisen, which is like a three-string banjo, kind of close to a banjammer, and that's what I wrote this piece on. It was called "Across the Pacific," but it sort of used those ideas a little bit, but well, I should say some of those ideas that I used in that song are kind of creeping into this. But I like the texture of those slides, like I said, in that vibrato, and that's something kind of new that I'm messing around with as a voice. The other thing that I tend to do, in addition to looking up um, other instruments, is sitting with the dulcimer, looking at the fretboard, and thinking, okay, what do my hands want to play? What do my hands not absolutely not want to play? What if they never done before? And the longer I play, the more challenging that becomes. But sometimes what I find is kind of a quick and easy way to really dive into something is look at the techniques you already play and then how can you do them different. So instead of trying to think of something totally outside the box, try and think about something that actually is close to what you already do. And for me, I've been messing around with the latest thing for me anyway in that department has been messing around with these picking patterns. And I know some of you on here have taken a flat picking class with me before, and so you've probably done something like this. And I'll move the mic a little closer to the dulcimer. Um, so a lot of times when the melody is on this bass string, that's a pattern that I'll use to fill in. So if I'm counting beats, I'm going 1, 2, and 3, 4, and something along those lines. I generally don't use that pattern if I'm playing something on the melody string, and so I've been trying to do that, and it's been kind of this crazy mental puzzle for me to actually try and do something like that. And so that's kind of creeping into this new piece as well, where I've been using those all that effect. But I've been trying to apply that in different ways on the fretboard, like a let's see. Oh yeah, so a different pattern has been based on something I do a lot on Bandjammer, where if I'm playing the melody on the melody string, I'll play that on the first beat, and I'll fill in two eighth notes after that on the open bass string or a fretted bass string if I'm getting a chord tone. Or if I'm playing the melody on the middle string, which I do quite a bit, I'll start there instead of the melody string. So that's my basic pattern. And so again, I've been trying to mess around with that, and instead of playing any kind of melody or significant melodic content on the middle string or melody string, I've been trying to move the bass around in ways to create some kind of interesting phrasing. And so on. So those are sort of the technical things that I've been doing to try and go about taking my ear by surprise, taking my fingers by surprise, and just continuing to grow as a musician. But those are all things that I've been doing for a long time. Nothing really needs to change for me to keep doing that. Your support has been a big reason why I have the luxury to dedicate some time to working out these new uh, technical kinks with my playing and keep my ear interested in what I'm doing, or at least surprised. but um, but one thing that I've always been really fascinated with the mountain dulcimer is what kind of sonic setting it sits in. In other words, what kind of instrumentation? Because the instrument, unlike violin, guitar, banjo, so many other instruments, is really pretty young from what we know of it. And think we're still kind of trying to figure that out in a big way. How does this instrument fit into an ensemble? What types of ensembles? We like to say it can fit into anything, and I think in a big way that's true. But figuring out how to do that is a whole nother story, and I think there's so many different approaches to it right now. We're all trying to figure out and learn from each other. But um, I've played in bands for a long time, and in the last couple years since I've been moving around from Tallahassee to Gainesville and then up to Signal Mountain after getting married, moving into new places where I didn't really know too many local musicians. Um, it was tough to collaborate and find local musicians. Now I've been in Signal Mountain for a little while. I've got a good friend who's a great hammer dulcimer player that lives right down the road. I've gotten to know some other musicians in the area, but also we've gotten to a point on Patreon. I'm really thankful to say where I can actually start to dedicate some time and some funds into going into a studio and collaborating with other musicians. And in 2018, that's what I really want to experiment with is uh, not necessarily starting another band or anything, but just going to the studio for one track at a time and writing something that sounds completely different from the last thing I did with very different ornamentation and just working on some cool collaborations and what those collaborations will look like. I mean, I think some of them might be. It might be one might be as simple as just collaborating with another mountain dulcimer player. I've got a lot of friends in the mountain dulcimer world. I would love to grab to record a track or two whenever they're passing through town. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And I'm sure, depending on the range of players, I'm sure each track would sound very different. There's also some vocalists I'm looking forward to working with, but some of the ones kind of outside the box are there's I've always been really into classical music and how the dulcimer might fit into that. Um, I want to do some writing for dulcimer with string quartet, and that's I've been working on this a little bit, or string trio with violin, viola, and cello, or bass, or two violins and cello, plus mountain dulcimer, and and I've got some ideas for that already. I'm really excited. Other things might be, I mean, drum set, bass, and mountain dulcimer, and I think that could be really cool. And uh, I would also, I'm like I said, I'm going back down to Florida pretty soon. In Tallahassee, there's a really great ethnomusicology department with a lot of different ensembles, and I want to work on putting something together every time I'm in town with the Chinese ensemble, the Irish ensemble down there. They've been doing some really great stuff with their ethnomusicology department, and I want to get back home and visit friends and family and create some music while I'm there. And if I'm dreaming out loud, pie in the sky kind of stuff, I would love to be able to hire Bela Fleck to do like a mountain dulcimer and banjo duet. I think that'd be cool. It might not ever happen. I don't know Bela Fleck, and I don't know how to make that happen. But if it ever does happen, it would be because of your support. So thank you all. Um, uh, so I think that's everything that I had to say. A lot of that collaboration probably won't happen until later in 2018. I'm still well, my busy season is about to pick back up, and then it all kind of comes to ahead in the summer where there's a string of week-long camps happening, and I love that. That's great fun. But in May, I'm also going over to Europe for I think about 3 weeks. I'll be in the UK. It's going to be a good trip. I'm looking forward to teaching for a week in the UK, and I think I'm also doing a workshop at a college, at a university for their music department while I'm over there. So, yeah, it'll be fun to work with some college students in the UK who don't play dulcimer yet, but they will. Um, so yeah, like I said, a lot of those recordings probably won't start to surface until later in 2018, probably around August, September is when the ball will really get rolling with that. But I'll be working on it in the meantime. And of course, I'll also be continuing to write solo material and post that and share it on Patreon. Um, I've got a I've got a bunch of Scottish lute music to post pretty soon. My system with that has been to look at the lute tablature and which is kind of its own really weird beast, and get that worked out, transcribed in standard notation, and um, and when I have that, uh, I usually that's when I go and uh, what was I saying? I'm sorry. I've got several different things open where I'm command center's a little crazy. Um, so anyway, as I was saying, yeah, so I usually look at the lute tablature, which is its own crazy weird thing, and then I put that in standard notation. Then I create dulcimer arrangements out of it. And right now, I have a whole bunch of Scottish lute pieces that are still in standard notation that I haven't created dulcimer arrangements for, but I've been working pretty steadily on that, and I'm looking forward to getting that shared with all of you, which should happen pretty soon. So, oh yeah, and one more final thing after this fine drink of water. Um, as some of you have probably heard me say before, there's so many instruments that I do actually want to learn how to play. Even dulcimer's been sort of my baby and continues to be my main thing. There's no shortage of instruments that I want to learn, or at least have some fundamental understanding of how they're played, and how they function. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to dedicate some time to learning some instruments from scratch. Um, the two on my radar are ukulele and cello. So I know how they're tuned. I don't know any songs on them yet. Actually, that's not entirely true. I know some songs on ukulele, but I'm still very basic at it and occasionally still have to look up some chord charts. So I'm not by any means advanced. One of the things I thought would be kind of cool is to track the learning process of all these instruments. This will be sort of on a peripheral basis, but I'm gonna um, record myself practicing working through this material as I learn more instruments, and I was going to share it with you all on Patreon, so that you can see sort of at least what my learning process is with a lot of instruments. And um, one of the things, like I've said before, in workshops, it always kind of it drives me nuts, and I'm not mad at anyone who said this in the past, but I always hate hearing Uh, well, of course you can do that, like, you're a natural, it's just not true, no one's born being able to play anything, and so, I thought it would be kind of fun for me anyway to post some videos of me, um, playing something absolutely horrible and painful. Maybe that's not what Patreon's for, but, um, I thought it'd be cool. So, anyway, working on new techniques, working for different ensembles to record, and learning some other instruments and sharing that process. Um, those are just some of the things that I want to do for 2018. Um, and but yeah, in the meantime, I'll continue working, trying to get better at this thing as much as I can anyway. Um, and I appreciate your support along the way. And I know this isn't really a Q&A necessarily, but moving forward, one thing I will like to say while I'm working on uh, what kind of ensembles I want to try and record Mountain Dulcimer in, I would love some feedback and some input on that. What kind of setting do you want to hear um, Mountain Dulcimer? Do you want to hear it as a duet with a sitar? Do you want to hear it in like a gypsy jazz setting? Whatever you want, let me know, and I'm gonna try my best to make it happen. Because that's the stuff that excites me. All the stuff that I can't do yet that I need to work on. So, um, I hope that gives you some kind of input into or some idea as to what I'm hoping to do in 2018 with Patreon and more of the same stuff. In addition to all that. So, if you have any questions, any input, sorry, I keep rubbing my nose. I know it's nasty. I don't know what's going on. Uh, you all make me quite nervous. All right, gypsy jazz, definitely. I definitely want to do that, and I actually already have some players in mind. I was hoping someone would chime in and say definitely gypsy jazz. So thanks, Jim. um, so yeah, I guess that's all for me. Um, and if you have any input along the way, please drop me a note, send me a comment on Patreon or a private message, shoot me an email, send me a Facebook message. I'm always happy to get any input from patrons because you guys keep me going. So thank you. Oh, yeah, one more thing. I'm sorry I keep wrapping this up and then going, no, I have one more thing to tell you. There's a few of you that are at the level where I owe you an original composition. I've been simultaneously working on a few at the same time, and um, I know one of them is being regifted to someone else. So I'm writing a tune in someone else's honor, which is a really cool thing, I think. But after it's shared and that surprise is well, no longer a surprise, it's a given gift. Then I'll share some more of what that process is like along the way. But that's been a fun challenge. Thanks for giving me that challenge. Um, to those patrons, and I'll look forward to sharing some more of that in the near future. So, on that note, now I think I really am going to wrap this up. So, thanks for hanging out with me on a Tuesday night. I'm off to Florida this week for a house concert in McAlpin, Florida. And like I said, John Timlin, I'll look forward to seeing you there. And I talked to David Beatty, who said he might actually be coming out to that. That'll be fun. Look forward to seeing David. Looking forward to seeing my friends and family in Tallahassee, Florida, where I'm going to be dropping in and visiting for a few days. I was going to do a little house concert and a workshop while I was in Tallahassee. It doesn't look like I'm going to be there long enough to do that. I'll have to come home before then, but next time, Florida. So let's plan on it for next time. I'm hoping to come back and visit more often now. So especially now that you guys are getting snow. Good job, Florida. That's impressive. We've so far on the mountain, we've just had ice. That's it. But but anyway, all right. So for real this time. Now, that's all I have to share for you. Again, thanks for hanging out with me on a Tuesday night. And as always, if you have any questions, any requests, any input, please let me know, and I will be happy to talk to you then. So, on that note, good night, everybody, and I will see you next time. Okay.